Well, hello there, and welcome to the Dana Spencer Show, where we talk about solving problems, building relationships, quitting corporate, and the freedom to walk in our God given purpose. I hope you are feeling amazing today. You have the activity of your limbs. This is the day that the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And I'm super glad today because I have an amazing, I know I say that every week, but I have an amazing guest with me here today. So please give a warm welcome to Miss Corrinne Tarver. Woo! Welcome to the Dana Spencer Show. How we feeling?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, I'm super excited to have you. And I know you are a busy woman, so we are just going to jump right into things. So tell us, as a little girl, what was it that you wanted to be when you grew up?
Believe it or not, I didn't have any particular goal in mind. I've always been kind of a let's see what comes and then take whatever opportunities presented and go with it.
Okay, so where would that land you? So where are you from?
I'm from New York. Yes, I'm from Mount Vernon, New
Okay.
York, and grew up. It's a small town with a whole lot of in the middle of a whole lot of big cities. So it might be 4 square miles, but it's not far from the Bronx, New York, and Yonkers, and some other really large metropolises.
Cool. So, as an elementary school, middle school, were there things that you were interested in? Were you naturally athletic? What was that like for you?
Back then, I did dance. I went to dancing school. I also did a little tennis, did a little track. I mean, I was just someone that liked and enjoyed to just be active. I was a very active kid. Gymnastics didn't really happen until a little later in life. I did it at school. They had a time frame we did gymnastics, and the gym teacher told my mom that I had a talent and that I should get involved in some form of organized gymnastics. At first, it was a small organization. We were in the bottom of a church. We would roll equipment in, roll equipment out. The bars were actually men's P bars that they just lifted one side up. The beam was completely wood, no covering, no nothing. The vault was half the size. It was very interesting. Panel mats. There was no real floor, so it was organized, but it wasn't what most people would look at and think of as gymnastics. From there, I went to a Y, and that was a little more organized. But again, we bought the equipment in, and we had to bring the equipment back out every day because the facility was also basketball and volleyball. So we didn't have a permanent space. So again, it was more serious, and I went twice a week to doing that, but it still wasn't serious gymnastics like I was doing. I actually think it was three times a week there. But it was for, I think we practiced 9 hours a week of gymnastics. That was about the extent of what I did. And then when they got to the point where they told my parents that they took me as far as they could and that I needed to go somewhere else if I wanted to continue with the sport. So she brought me to a gym in Connecticut, and I went from 9 hours a week to 20 hours a week.
So, how far of a drive do you remember from Connecticut, from New York to Connecticut?
It was about 45 minutes drive, but I actually took public transportation to practice. So I would take a cab, pick me up from school, brought me to the train. I took the train up to Stamford, Connecticut, and then I took a bus to the stop closest to the gym.
Wow. Where was Uber back then, right?
Yeah, I know. But it was basically the cab company was basically Uber because my mom would set it up. I guess she went in about once a week, and she would pay for the entire week. And so every day there was a driver there to pick me up from school and drop me off at the train station. So it was clockwork. They were ready to go, and it was the train every day, Monday through Friday.
So, did you actually enjoy gymnastics at that point, or was it just something to do?
Oh no, I always loved gymnastics. I mean, that's why I did it. Gymnastics was my tell people it was my happy place, and it was also my safe space. It was where I was 100% in control of what I was doing, but I was always happy when I was in gym. Even when I was frustrated, upset, or mad, or something happened, it was still my happy place. So that was where, nothing mattered. Nothing outside the world mattered at all when I was at practice.
Yeah, that's so good. It's like we all need something like that to get away from this crazy world, right?
Yeah, we do. I mean, sometimes it was, I mean, it wasn't easy. Think about 20 hours a week and then you add another 3 hours. I mean, I practiced 4 hours a day and then it was another 2 to 3 hours travel time plus school, trying to get schoolwork done and just everything that went along with that. It was definitely things that were there. And I just, when I was at practice, I was good.
Well, obviously, you had to have a high level of time management skills, even at that age. Are there some tips that you can give to those out there listening to keep the main thing, and be completely organized so that you can accomplish your goals in life?
Well, I utilized the time that I had. So on the train, sorry, the train was about almost an hour commute. It was about an hour. So I was able to do homework on the train. I would sit by the conductor. So the conductors all knew who I was because it was basically the same conductors every day at that time. And when I would be coming home, sometimes if I was in a car, I would read or get stuff done then. And then when I get home, eat dinner, shower, and then homework. Weekends were also a good time to kind of catch up if I needed to.
And so you would do this for how long?
Like I said, I worked out Monday through Friday. Or years wise, I started at a serious gym when I was in eighth grade, all the way through graduating high school.
Wow, incredible. So once I'm sure by this time people are starting to notice you, and are you starting to get college offers at this time?
Believe it or not, no, because back when I was being recruited, you couldn't talk to athletes until their senior year. Like, you weren't really allowed to talk to them their junior year. And so when for whatever reason they had me listed as a junior instead of a senior in all the, I guess, whatever college coaches looked at or knew whatever information they received, because you remember computers were not as common back then, so everything was written, typed up, that kind of thing. And so I wasn't being recruited, and which was strange because I was on the US national team. And when I first came out, there were very few national team members who were going to college. Most of them basically retired. And so to be on a national team and go to college was a big deal. And it was exciting, but I wasn't recruited because they thought I was a junior. And then I had a friend that went to Nebraska and she told her coach, "Hey, why aren't you recruiting Corrine Wright?" And so then he found out, started recruiting me. And then a conversation between the head coach at Georgia and my coach, where she revealed, too bad she's a junior. And my coach said, no, she's a senior, she's graduating. So then I started getting calls from Georgia. And soon after that, when I went to visit Georgia, that's when everybody else figured out, wait a minute, she went to visit Georgia. And I had gone to visit Nebraska as well. And they were like, she's doing visits. She must be a senior. And then I started getting phone calls. But by then I'd already decided I wanted to go to Georgia. So I just, I just stopped the recruiting process and committed there and I was done.
So what was that like? New York to Georgia. What kind of culture shock was that?
A big one. Because I was recruited during gymnastics season. And back then, Georgia didn't really have as big of a following. I mean, there was 500 people in the stands for the Georgia Alabama meet. And if today a Georgia Alabama meet, or I should say later in like with the Georgia um, Suzanne Younklin and Sarah Pattison, there's actually an ESPN special about the two of them and the rivalry, how big it was. So if you can imagine, it was barely 500 people in the stands when I went on my recruiting trip. So um, I didn't really get to see the fullness of the Georgia and the Southern, where you can say a lot of my teammates were actually from the North. So I had quite a few teammates from Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and the New York area. So I didn't really experience the South until I went down in the fall. And the first time I truly, truly experienced it was when I went to my first football game. And all I can remember is looking around going, there's 85,000 people, and they're barking. What did I get myself into? These people are barking. What is this? I mean, I I mean, I'm from right, like I said, I'm right outside the Bronx. High school football, if we got 500 people in the stands for a high school football game, that was a miracle. That was like the intense rivalry. And there really were no college teams around that area, at least not that did football. There were basketball teams, but not football. And so the only football I knew was the NFL. And that's a completely different animal. I never experienced college football, even really paid attention to it. So going down there and going to a football game and having that many people and seeing men dressed in red, bright red pants and you know and suspenders, and I'm just like, what is this? What did I get myself into? But it didn't take very long. I think by the second game I was barking along with them. So
That's so good. You're like, well, I can't beat them. It's way more of them than of me.
and it was fun. I mean, I just said, you know what, I'm gonna go with it. I committed to this school and I'm gonna enjoy it.
So yeah, and so then you would go on to have a tremendous amount of success at Georgia. So what was it like? I'm sure that I thought I saw something where it said that you were the only black on the team, only black person on the team. What was that like for you?
Well, I was the first black person they ever had on the team as well. I was okay. And I say that, as I said before, so many of my teammates were from the North. So it was just, I mean, if I went down there and like all my teammates were Southern, maybe I would have felt differently. Um, I would say that there was definitely things that happened that were a culture shock, things that were said, generally speaking, not in a negative way, like they weren't, you know, criticizing me or coming at me or anything, but still felt comfortable to say things that I was like, I don't think you should be saying that. But I had learned. I went to a couple of frat parties and realized that this really wasn't a place for me. I shouldn't be here. I mean, I felt very uncomfortable, so I stopped going. But generally speaking, I got a pass. Being an athlete and being a high profile athlete, like I said, I just made the national team and was coming to Georgia. So that was huge. I believe I was the first gymnast to be an active member of the US national team and go to college. My counterpart had been in the Olympics. So we got a lot of publicity. And so that opened a lot of doors, and it allowed me to be in spaces that other African American students would not have been permitted to be in, or would not have been invited in. So being an athlete, yes, there was other athletes. Football was God there. This is SEC football is it. So the football players were there, the basketball players were there, other athletes were there, but not even all of them. Like the Olympic sports, you generally didn't see. You didn't see the track athletes there. You didn't see. I mean, generally, women's basketball would be there some, but it was basically football, men's basketball, and gymnastics kind of got that pass. Women's basketball got a pass too when they wanted. Other sports, not so much, and other students, not so much.
So how would you make it to what were some of the things at the college level that really stuck out to you as just being a monumental stepping stone to what you would eventually do?
I didn't think in those terms when I was in college. I mean, like I didn't think, oh, I'm the first black gymnast to go to Georgia, and oh, I'm able to navigate these spaces because I'm a high profile athlete. I just live my life, and I'm someone that if I'm not comfortable, I'm just not going to go back. If I'm not accepted, then I will find a place in which I am accepted. I will say that I was so used to being in white spaces that I wasn't uncomfortable being in the white spaces. So, my friends going in high school in my club gym were pretty much all white. I mean, I had black teammates, but they were younger than me, and I wasn't really close with them because of kind of, they weren't in a group with me. They didn't really train with me. They were on our team, but the people I trained with were basically white. The people I hung out with were that. So I was used to that. So coming to Georgia, I was used to being in that space. I was used to hanging out with teammates who were white. But I wouldn't say, maybe it was partially through my freshman year, but really more my sophomore year, that I started realizing that I didn't know many black students on campus. Now, there was a small percentage. There's probably back then was maybe 15%, maybe 20%. Actually, maybe it was more like 20%, but I didn't really know them. And I didn't know how to get to know them because I didn't know how to navigate those spaces because I hadn't been in those spaces. My high school career, I was in white spaces. So I had a friend who she said to me one day, she goes, "We got to bring you back to your black roots." And I thought it was hilarious. And she's white. It was this white girl that on the basketball team, and she was like, "You need to connect with more black students here." And and I was like, "You're right. How do I do that?" And so I got introduced. I also met someone that was an AKA, but she was my RA on our floor. And so she was like, "Okay, well, I'm just going to start bringing you to some of these parties, some of the Black Greek parties, and introduce you to people." So that allowed me to I mean, they knew who I was because, again, publicity, we were in a newspaper weekly, pictures of me or other team members, or I'm mentioned based upon how I did that weekend. And it was during season. Like, so the fall, I was not really involved. Actually, it was spring quarter, so it was later. It was been like towards the end of the year that I started doing this, and it was great. I mean, I started meeting people and started to get within that culture and become friends with different people within the Black culture on that campus. But yeah, I mean, I needed a little assistance to do that because I just really didn't know how to do that, especially on a southern campus. I'm from the north, and in the north, there people are more, generally speaking, they're more open and more accepting and more, used to diversity. This is the deep south in the late 80s, early 90s. It was different.
Yes. Yeah, way different. So, what would be some of the tips that the skill sets that you would learn from being an athlete that you are able to bring over into your everyday life?
Like you said, time management. I mean, I still struggle with it, but time management and multitasking. There's so many people that cannot multitask. They have to do one thing and then other thing. I'm juggling 15 different hats at any given time. And I kind of like being in that space. I don't like being overwhelmed, but I liked being busy. I like kind of, if I only have one task to do, sometimes my mind will wander too much. And just, rolling with the punches. Because, gymnastics is a sport. Everyone's trying for perfection, but we all know that chances of us actually achieving perfection are pretty slim. So learning how to not be disappointed when it's not perfect.
Yeah, and then you would go on to be the first Black person to win the NCAA All American. I mean, incredible. And how do you get such these honors and then you remain so humble about it?
Honestly, that was my goal going to college, was to win an NCAA all around title. I'm not gonna lie. But I honestly didn't think of it in terms of being the first Black to win one, because to me, I mean, I just assumed there already had been Black athletes who won a title. Um, I wasn't the first Black to win a NCAA title. I was the first to win the all around, which is obviously a little bit harder because it's 4 events versus one. But I didn't know that I was the first Black to win the all around until a reporter said it. So I wasn't thinking in those terms. Like, and for me, I tell people that was probably the best thing because I then didn't put any extra pressure on myself. My goal was to go out there, hit 4 events, and to hopefully win a title. And I had finished third my freshman year, so I'd come really, really close. And the people, I knew that that it was a possibility because I'd come so close to winning before. And so I didn't put any extra pressure on myself. But I think if I thought in terms of, oh, you're going to be the first Black to do this, and you're going to be the first this, and you're going to be first that, that extra pressure probably would have, one, taken away the beauty of and the fun in what I was doing, because I would have, in my head, it would have kind of been, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do better, you have to do this. And then that becomes kind of a negative because it puts extra pressure on me. So it came very organically. And so then I could enjoy it more.
Right. So what obviously there was not who were some of your idols, not idols, that's a bad word. Who were some of the people that you looked up to growing up? Because if who were some of the people that you looked up to growing up as gymnasts?
Oh, I didn't have any gymnasts.
Right.
I didn't have any gymnasts to look up to, and that's why I say it came organically. It wasn't really about. I'm a goal setter. I'm someone that has always set myself with goals, and I tell people stories about how, like, when I first started doing serious gymnastics, the first year, I when I went to the gym in Connecticut, I was working out with a group that was above me because of the time. And I just remember being, I don't want to be the worst kid in this group, which I was when I first got there, because technically I was a level below them. And so by the end of the summer, I had more skills than most of the other girls because I was determined to be there. And then, as I started competing and as I started getting pretty good scores, I'm like, I want to win regionals. So that was there. And then the next year, when I moved up to the next level, it was like I was going to make nationals, but it wasn't just a goal to make nationals. It was a goal to finish high within nationals. And I remember my coach, when we were at nationals, and it was before I competed, and he said, you could be in the top 10. So, that's where we want to go. And I looked at him, I said, no, I'm gonna be in the top 5. And he said, okay. And I finished 3rd. So it was like, he was kind of like, all right. So I think he realized what he was getting, because for me, the next was elite and qualify elite. I did that. I didn't make it as far. It was navigating these new waters. The next year I said, I'm going to make the national team. That's my goal. And so, and I did. So, when I set out goals like that, then I had something that I was working towards. So it wasn't really I could be like somebody else. It was, this is what I want. This is what my goal is. And I'm going to do what I need to do in order to get there.
Are you finding that? Because I've been told, and I do some other things, but only maybe like about 12% of people really are goal oriented and are able to set a goal and actually achieve a goal. The rest of us are, the rest of the people are just like, they got to see it in order to achieve it. They got to see somebody else, doing it. So, how are you able to help other people who aren't as necessarily goal oriented as yourself, but that they need to see it?
Well, I mean, just being who I am and doing what I do is helping. That's one of the reasons I wanted to come to FISC, was to be able to, one, open more opportunities for Black gymnasts, or I should say gymnasts of color, because we they're not all Black gymnasts on my team, to have opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise. That may not be recruited, or may not be able to be on a team even as a walk on. So that may have been their dream, but wasn't necessarily a goal, because a lot of gymnasts, sometimes you hear what their dream is versus what their goal is. So there's a big difference between the two, because a goal is something you're going to work towards. A dream is something you hope happens. So how do you make sure that's the case? And getting athletes to understand the difference is not always easy, because sometimes their dream, or sometimes the goal that they say what their goal is, to make the Olympics. Well, the chances of you making Olympics are pretty slim. So that's really not a goal. That's a dream. Your goal should be, make it to states. My goal should be, finish top 5 at states, or make it to DP nationals, or, those are goals, that are things that are attainable. Olympics, or for an athlete that maybe is not that talented, nationals is a dream, not a goal. So getting people to understand the difference, that's something that I always hope to try to do. But honestly, just being an example is allows people to see. Um, Sometimes I can be considered a Debbie Downer, because I don't ever want to crush anyone's dreams, nor do I. But sometimes I'm trying to redirect them into, okay, well, let's make goals that are realistic. Let's make goals that are achievable, because if your goals are too high, you're never going to achieve it. You're always going to think you failed, and that's not a good place to be. So let's get something that's achievable, and then once you do that, we'll set something a little bit higher, and then we'll go for that and achieve that and go for higher. So I'm that voice of reason, which people don't always like, but
Yeah, and research says that only 10 to 15% of people are really self-aware. So to your point, I have this goal of, making it to the Olympics, but I really don't have the characteristics to even make it to the nationals. And
Right.
so just not having that self-awareness and understanding who you really are and what your capabilities are can kind of be a hindrance to achieving those goals because you don't even know who you are or what you're even capable of. So are you the type that typically pushes athletes, or are you sounds like you're the voice of reason?
Um, I push athletes. I mean, if I know that an athlete has the ability to be better, then I push them. They don't always like the way I push them. And, I said, I'm not going to, you're accepting mediocrity, but I'm not. I'm not. So I'm going to stay on you until you do better because you are capable of doing better. And then there's times when I will completely back off and let them figure it out on their own. And then there's times where I will jump in where necessary. So I'm gonna let them, swim on their own. They start to sink. Then I'll be there to kind of help them back up, but I'm not gonna hold them up. I'm gonna lift them up and tell you, okay, you need to do this if you want to stay afloat. And either you're gonna listen or you're not gonna listen. So it depends on the athlete. It depends on the person. I try to be that person that give my examples of what worked for me, things that I've done, things that I have set out for myself, or that I found to be successful. And sometimes we'll modify that to help them to understand or to make it work for them. But yeah, I mean, I guess I fall into those categories, which I would say is why I've achieved as much as I have because of, where understanding what it is I want, what I needed to do, and be willing to do what was necessary to get there.
Yeah, that part. So how will you get from Georgia to now coaching at Fisk University?
Oh, there was so much in between. There's so many, so many things in between, and too many to really talk about. But I had different goals. I guess you could say it wasn't even a goal; it was more of a dream. And I realize that now it was a goal at the time, but I realized it was really a dream. Or maybe it was a goal and it just once I got close to achieving it, I realized I didn't really want it anymore. But I went to law school and I passed the New York State bar because I wanted to be a sports agent. I thought that, that was where I was going to spend my life to helping athletes to not only get a great contract, but to help set them up for life and help them get the financial understanding they need. Cause I'm sure you've looked and seen like in the NFL, how many of these guys don't really have any kind of financial literacy. And I don't have the most financial literacy either, but I was going to make sure that I had a team of people that could do it. But as I interned, I realized that this isn't just not what I want to do. I mean, it's not what I thought it was going to be, and it's just not me, and I wouldn't be successful because it wasn't me. It wasn't what I'd hoped and dreamed it would be. So I wouldn't, I just know that, I have to 100% buy into it in order for me to be successful at it. So I really kind of floundered for a little while trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I ended up in college athletics, not coaching in the athletic side of it. I always coached on the side, but not in the college level. So I've always been a gymnastics coach since I was 15. And I always loved the sport, always wanted to stay involved. But my goal back then became I want to be an athletic director. So, it was a complete shift in where my goals and dreams were.
Law school. So, and I have a friend of mine, she has two boys. One of them is studying for the bar right now, and the other one is studying for the LSAT. I think he took it and then is about to take it again. So that blows my mind. Wait till I tell them
Well,
that. I mean,
tell her, give her son, give me a call. I have the foolproof way of passing almost any bar.
oh
But you
my,
gotta listen. I have people that I've told this to, and they didn't. And they when they didn't pass, I asked, "Did you do this word for word?" They're like, "No, I did this instead." And I was like, "Oh well."
wow. Oh my goodness. Oh, they owe me big time. No,
It's
I'm just
not
joking.
a,
That's
it's just
incredible.
a method. It's not really a study this or study that. It's not really like that. It's just a way of prioritizing and putting things into place. and it clicks into place. But I had to. It took me. I mean, I tell people I failed the bar the first time I took it. I could have passed because I failed by 5 points, and I panicked on the multi state. It's a the multiple choice section because they had said, you can only spend so much time per question, so much time per question, and I was going slower, and I realized it, and so I panicked and started rushing through it, and I let the voice from all those things saying, "You have to do this, you have to do this," you like only this much time, only this much time, and I let those voices get in my head and it completely derailed me. I finished, I think it was 30 minutes early from the exam. You don't finish 30 minutes early in that exam. It's 200 questions. There's no way you finish early. And I knew when I walked out of there, I was like, I failed because I did not, I couldn't even remember what any questions. So I obviously skimmed over stuff because I was panicking. So the second time around, I really was very systematic about how I went about every single thing that I did, and I found a method, and when I went to take the bar, it was like it just clicked.
That's incredible. That is really, really incredible. Kudos to you
Thank you.
for doing that and understanding that. So when you said about the voices in your head, and so I just think about this day and age being a college athlete and having social media, and everybody has an opinion, and now they get to throw their opinion at you. How do you help athletes to silence all of that?
Honestly, I have to work on that because I have to work on myself silencing in that. Last year was difficult for me because I felt so much pressure for us to be successful because it was like the weight of Black gymnastics was on my shoulders as the head coach of the first HBCU. If we failed, then no other HBCU would add, and that would be the death of HBCU gymnastics. And there was so many voices coming from so many places. So I did not do as good of a job as I feel like I should have to help my athletes navigate it because I was struggling to navigate it. And so it's still a work in progress. This generation is so incredibly different. um some of the stuff I tell them, things that works for me doesn't work for them because I never had that constant bombardment of information where it's just 24/7 information. There's something to be said about anonymity and being able to do something and nobody knows you did it. So, and being comfortable and even though I didn't fully have that because at Georgia, our faces were known. We went to a party, everyone knows the gymnasts were here. I couldn't get away with anything. And we didn't have social media. If I had a solo cup in my hand, it could be filled with water, but it would get back to my coach. She would find out stuff, and we didn't have social media back then or cell phones. So I understood that everything I did was looked upon, but this generation doesn't understand as much. And then the whole COVID thing makes it that much harder for many of these kids. Some of them can be very socially awkward because they didn't have to interact in a way that they do now during like their prime times, like maybe during high school or during part of those time frames where they would learn to navigate those waters. So I'm still learning with this generation the best way to reach them because again, with so much information, it's harder to find out how much noise they're getting to help teach them how to silence it because I'm just like, well, where did you hear that or where was that said? And it's like, oh, it's this side or that side or this, it's a work in progress.
Yes, and I just love to see Black excellence. I was at a conference in Nashville last year, and it was for mental health and athletes. And there was a young lady that was there from Fisk Gymnastics, and I was like, Fisk Gymnastics? What? Fisk has a gymnastics team. My sister went to Fisk back, way back when, but it was incredible to just hear it. And like you said, you're paving the way, and you have all this weight on your shoulders. But then it's just incredible to see those beautiful Black faces and just doing so well. So, what would you say to those out there who are looking up to you all? And I know you said the weight of your shoulder, so not too much pressure, But what would you say to those who are looking at you and admiring and thinking, "Oh my goodness, one day I want to be, on the fifth gymnastic team." What are some of the skill sets that are needed for them to work on at the high school level in order to compete at the college level?
Number one is being comfortable in your own skin, and then number two, making that skin armor. I mean, there was a lot of things thrown at me. As much as I got a pass, that doesn't mean I didn't hear it. That doesn't mean people weren't saying it. That doesn't mean that people didn't want me to fail. And so, it's also being realistic in what your goals are. To, I get emails from young ladies sometimes. I'm like, this is just not going to be work in college. You're not going to have the skill set necessary for you to be successful in college. And to take you onto my team would be setting you up for failure, because you would never make the lineup. You never make it through things. You'd just be working out for nothing. Like, you wouldn't, and you would get there and see that you're not up to par, and nobody wants to come in and see that they're nowhere near where everyone else is. That hurts, and that's hard. So being realistic is number one. And if you're not sure, then ask questions. If you're a question, but you got to be willing to accept the answer. But also, even though you're willing to accept the answer, don't always necessarily take that one answer as the God-given truth. Because just because one person's opinion, my opinion may be one thing, another coach's may be something completely different. That doesn't mean you're just be like, I'm better than that, I don't care what she says. It's okay, so this door is closed. Is there another door that's open? And am I willing to accept if the door that opens doesn't lead to college gymnastics? The door that may open may lead you somewhere completely different. It may lead you to diving. It may lead you to track and field. It may not lead to gymnastics, but are you willing to walk through the door that opens for you? And are you willing to accept that it may not be what it is that you had always hoped it was going to be, but it is going to be what is best for you?
So when I think about us and I think about all these different attitudes and personalities, um, how are you able to navigate? Because I think about, I had conversations with professional athletes, and a lot of us have daddy issues. We've got abandonment issues, we've got issues where so many just different issues. So how are you able to help your young ladies to what, I don't know what happened to you in the past, but we have got to figure out how to work together in order to accomplish the FISC goal and to buy into the FISC process.
It's a work in progress. It is. And I'll be honest with you, I don't get it sometimes, because I'm such a straightforward person that when it's these layers of stuff, I'm like, well, why just, like when I say to the girls, why are you letting somebody else hurt your feelings? Why do you care what somebody else thinks? Why do you care what a teammate says or thinks or whatever? You know who you are, your gymnastics. Why are you worried about anybody else? The only people you have to worry about is the coach, because the coach is going to determine whether you're in a lineup or not. Your teammates don't decide that. And so it doesn't, I mean, I don't get it. And sometimes I do get it, but I don't get it sometimes. And I say that because I had to deal with that. I mean, I had to hear my teammates saying things or complaining about things. And so, I had my bubble. I said, I know my gymnastics, I know what I'm capable of, and I know what my goals are. So I'm going to do what I need to do in order to get there. I'm not going to worry about what they're saying. I'm not going to worry. And I recently told one of my athletes, I said, you need to learn how to make all of that white noise. It needs to become white noise. It's there. It's there. You're going to hear it. But if it becomes white noise, it's not discernible. You're not going to be able to truly understand what they're saying, because white noise is meant to be just that, a sound that's there, but you don't really distinguish it for anything. It doesn't have a meaning of it in and of itself. And if you can learn to make all that chatter, all that excess into white noise, then you will be fine. You will be able to do what it is you want to do.
I really, really like that. I'm in an office now and I can hear the white noise. And I've been in corporate situations where the white noise wasn't on, and everybody's like, "Where's the white noise? Like, why can I hear everything?" And that is such a good analogy. I love, love, love that. That's a great analogy. Oh my goodness. So, as far as coaching, Or do you have any tips for other coaches out there who are needing some just help figuring it out? Or do you have any tips for them?
Well, it I mean, figuring out, I guess it's figuring what out. You know, for me, and I know for the other Black coaches that I know, and there's only 8 of us in college. Out of the 80 something teams, there's only 8 Black coaches. So we are there to help each other and to mentor each other. We have 2 new coaches that are new to, and I mean, most of my mentors are white. I'm gonna be honest with you. I have white mentors, because there was no other option. You know what I mean? The Black ones are my friends, not my mentors. They're my friends. So I still lean on them a lot to help me get through. But so what I'm kind of dealing with that is to help others to get their foot in the door. I tell people all the time, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Because almost every job I've gotten in college athletics has been because of somebody who knew me. And they vouched for me and said, "Hey, you should look at this person." Now, I had to go in there, interview, get the job, and convince them, but they would say, "You should look at this person. You should consider this person. I have a good candidate for you." And so they opened that door for me. I mean, it wasn't fully open. I had to open the rest myself, but they were there to help me. And so my best advice is make sure you get to know people and get to know people who have the ability to do something to help you. And that doesn't mean that every single person you meet is going to help you. It's not. I don't want a million people calling me and saying, "Oh, I know you now. Can you help me get a job?" Well, I don't really know you. I don't know who you are truly. I have to know that. But for people that I do know and I think would be great fit for a certain area, I will recommend. I'll say, "Hey, here's somebody you should consider if the question comes to me." But there are also times when there are people that want things and I say, "That's not a good fit for you." And they don't want to hear that. And then they go on and they do it anyways, and then they're miserable. And I'm like, "Well, and I know what you're walking into, and I know your personality type, and they don't mesh. It just doesn't mesh." So it's it there are times when I look at things and I say, well, but really it's who knows you more than who you know.
Absolutely. And so mental health and depression is big right now amongst athletes. What are some of the things that you all are doing at FIST to help identify the mental health issues and to kind of make sure that they don't, flare up?
Honestly, I don't think we do as good of a job as we need to. It's something for me that I have to do better at, learn. I mean, I've always been one to work with my athletes individually, but what I've discovered is being with a college setting is that once they leave my gym, they're still part of what I need to help. Whereas in club, once they go, they got their parents, they got their family members, they got all these different people that are going to deal with that side of things. And so I've had to kind of really switch how I see things and think. Um, I did bring in a mental coach from the very first moment that we had the team. The first thing, like we hadn't even stepped on campus yet, and I went to a mental coach who was also a friend of mine and said, "We need you, and I'm going to need you badly. I really need your help because this is I'm throwing 15 girls together for the first time. There's no, most teams you already have that team group done and then you bring new people in and you work to get them into the fold. Well, we had nothing. So we were starting from nothing and I was like, we need help. We're going to need someone, we're going to need to navigate, and I don't understand this generation enough mentally after COVID, after with social media, with all this stuff. I said, I can understand them, but the outside stuff I haven't had to really navigate enough for me to feel comfortable saying I'm an expert, I can do this. So we do have a mental coach that works with the girls, and we've done more with the university to help with the mental health of these girls, and they have gotten better with coming to either myself or my assistant coach and saying, "I need help. I need to talk to someone. So that has been this year, I would say, a much better aspect of things for them to admit that they need help. There's some that still don't want to admit it, and I kind of had to force them to get help last year. It sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I mean, when you force someone to talk to someone, they if they sit there and don't say anything, they're going to get nothing out of it. And at the end of the day, that's all I can do is I can provide you with the professionals that can help you. If you choose not to speak with them and utilize it, there's not a whole lot else I can do. I'm not experienced enough to tackle that on my own. So, we've been working more at the university, and I think the university is starting to understand a little bit more what is needed. Like you said, mental health is a big deal right now with athletes, and there's a lot of people out there that are looking to help with this current generation of athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. So incredible. You've just been amazing. And so, if we were going to put a bow on this conversation, what are a couple of things that you would want the listeners to walk away with?
Uh, you know, I mean, we talked about so many different things, and a lot of them are, I guess it's whether it's the things that you hear what I say, and hopefully you can apply it to your own personal life, whatever it is you do. It's to, figure out what your dream is. I mean, so many people have jobs that they hate and they're just going to work every day. What is it you want to do? What is it you truly want to do? And then and that's really hard to figure out. And that for some people that's really hard to figure. But once you figure that out, then what do you need to do to get to that goal or dream? And then ask yourself honestly, are you willing to do what it takes to get there? And if you don't know how to do it, do you have someone that can help you? Do you have someone you can ask questions and say, how do I do this? How do I do that? I've discovered myself that I needed help. I mean, I know I needed help with certain areas. I mean, I'm not a marketing person. I don't know much about marketing. Can I market myself? Yes. But it's because it's who I am. It's my personality. It's not because of some strategy. I needed to know strategies. How do I go and get this? How do I go and pursue that, or convince this corporation to sponsor us, things of that nature. And so now have someone that is working directly with me and the team to help, and I rely on this person so much because they know. So find someone that you can rely on, and if you don't have anyone, then you need to start branching out your network and maybe do some stuff that's uncomfortable. Maybe there's a seminar, or there's a, speaker, or there's a convention or some sort that you can go to, and then you're just going to put yourself out there and just blindly start introducing yourself, ask for phone numbers, ask for emails, and start emailing people. So many people are willing to help. They really are. I mean, as much as people tear you down, there's always going to be someone that's going to give you that hand and help you get to the next step. They may not get you to the top, but they can get you one step higher. So find those people.
Oh, I love that. Find the people that can help you to get one step higher. Coach, thank you so much for your time today and the nuggets that you have dropped. And remember out there, those that are listening, turn up the white noise and turn down the voices. Until next time on the Dana Spencer Show.